So, I bought my first house about 6 months ago. It's an old place, built in the 1920s with that creaky, settling wood kind of vibe. I knew I'd have to deal with drafty windows and noisy plumbing, but I wasn't expecting, well, what I'm dealing with now. The first strange thing was the noises. Not the usual house creaks, these sounded like shuffling, almost like footsteps, but lighter, dragging against the inside of the walls. Sometimes, late at night, I'd swear I could hear whispering. Not words I could make out, more like the sound of someone trying to speak but muffled, like through insulation. At first, I told myself it was mice, or maybe squirrels. But then I started noticing something else. The noises always seemed to stop the second I turned on a light, almost like whoever or whatever was making them knew I was awake. And then, one night, I caught a glimpse of something. A shadow moving just barely behind the thin crack of the door leading to the crawlspace in the hallway. The thing is, that crawlspace shouldn't even be big enough for a person to fit in. But the shadow was too tall to be a mouse. So, the crawlspace, it's this weird little door in the hallway, about waist height, painted over a dozen times since the house was built. When I moved in, I didn't even think much of it. I figured it was just some old storage area I'd never use. But after that night, when I saw the shadow slide past it, I couldn't stop staring at the damn thing. The handle was just a rusted iron latch, and the wood around it looked brittle, like no one had opened it in decades. I tried opening it the next morning, telling myself it was just a raccoon or something that slipped in. But the door wouldn't budge. Not stuck, locked from the inside. That made no sense. I even called a buddy of mine over to help me pry it open, but by the time he showed up, I had lost my nerve. I laughed it off, told him I was just spooked by old house noises. He teased me about being the guy who buys a haunted house on purpose. But that night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. exactly. Don't ask me why, I just knew the time. And I heard the latch on the crawlspace click, like someone was unlocking it. I froze when I heard the latch. I live alone, and no one should have been in the hallway. I stayed perfectly still in bed, straining to hear over the pounding in my ears. The sound was slow, deliberate, metal scraping against metal as the latch lifted. Then, a soft creak as the crawlspace door edged open. I wanted to convince myself it was just the wood warping. But then came the unmistakable sound of something dragging itself across the floor. Not footsteps, more like elbows and knees pulling along the hardwood. I couldn't see the hallway from my bed, but I didn't want to. I pulled the blanket over my face like a little kid, trying to stop my breathing from giving me away. And then, right outside my bedroom door, I heard it. A low, raspy whisper said my name. I don't remember making the decision to move, but suddenly I was out of bed, back pressed against the wall, staring at my closed bedroom door. The whispering had stopped, but I swear I could see the shadow of something just barely shifting under the crack. It was crouched low, like it was waiting. I grabbed the only thing nearby that could serve as a weapon, an old metal desk lamp, and just stood there, shaking, waiting for the handle to turn. But it didn't. Instead, the sound came again. Scrape, drag, as whatever it was moved away from my door, back down the hall. After a few minutes, I heard the crawlspace door click shut. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was a dream, but when I walked into the hallway, my stomach dropped. The crawlspace door was slightly open, and on the floor, leading from it to my bedroom door, was a faint trail. Smears of something dark, like dirt or dried blood. That morning I decided I couldn't ignore it anymore. I grabbed a crowbar from the garage and forced the crawlspace door all the way open. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Damp, rotten, almost metallic, like wet earth mixed with rust. The space inside was bigger than I expected, deeper than it should have been. It didn't look like a simple storage nook. I shined my phone flashlight inside, my hands trembling so badly I could barely keep the beam steady. The light hit the far wall and I realized it wasn't a wall at all. It was a tunnel, narrow, roughly carved, leading deeper into the darkness beneath my house. And along the floor, scattered like breadcrumbs, were little personal items. A broken pair of glasses, a shoe, A child's stuffed rabbit missing one eye, all coated in a fine layer of dust. I should have backed away right then, called the cops, burned the place down. But instead, I leaned closer, trying to see how far the tunnel went. That's when I heard breathing, slow, heavy, coming from the darkness ahead. And it wasn't mine. The breathing grew louder the longer I stood there, like whoever or whatever was in the tunnel knew I hadn't run. My flashlight started to flicker, the battery low, and I panicked, fumbling to keep the beam steady. That's when I saw it. A hand, pale, grayish, with long, dirt-caked fingernails, slowly curling around the edge of the tunnel wall. It wasn't reaching for me, not yet. It was just resting there, like a spider testing its web. I stumbled backward so fast I smacked my head against the hallway wall. My phone slipped out of my grip, clattering to the floor, the light now pointed at the ceiling. But in that brief second before I scrambled up, I heard it move. Not crawling this time, sprinting. The sound of hands and feet slapping against the dirt tunnel, racing toward the crawlspace opening. I didn't think. I just slammed the crawlspace door shut and shoved the hall table in front of it, my chest heaving. The scratching started immediately, slow at first, then harder, faster, until the whole door rattled against the frame. And then, as suddenly as it began, silence. I didn't care about my stuff, I didn't care about my job, I didn't care that it was barely 6 a.m. I just wanted out. I grabbed my keys, bolted for the front door, and yanked it open. But the chain lock was looped across the frame. I never used the chain lock. I never even touched it since moving in. And yet, there it was latched from the inside. That was the first moment I realized something else was wrong. Whoever had put it there hadn't done it while I was awake. They'd done it while I was sleeping. My stomach turned ice cold. I slammed it shut again, ran to the back door. Same thing, the deadbolt was locked tight, and I didn't even own a key for that one. I tried a window next, only to find the nails I'd pried out weeks ago to let in some air had been hammered back in. Every single exit was sealed. And then, from behind me, I heard the crawlspace door creak open. The creak of the crawlspace door nearly stopped my heart. I had shoved the hall table against it. I knew I had, but when I turned around, the table was pushed neatly to the side, like someone had carefully, quietly slid it away. The door itself was wide open. I couldn't see anything inside, just that same yawning blackness of the tunnel. But then came the sound. Not the frantic scratching from before. Not the heavy sprinting. This was worse. It was a voice. Low, rasping, like someone whose throat had been shredded from screaming too long. It didn't shout, didn't whisper my name this time. Instead, it said one word over and over in a rhythm that made my skin crawl. Down, down, down. Each time louder, closer. I couldn't move. My body was locked between running for the stairs and collapsing right there on the hallway floor. And then, from the darkness, something laughed. The laugh echoed down the tunnel, a dry, choking sound that didn't belong in a human throat. My phone was still on the floor where I'd dropped it earlier, the flashlight beam cutting across the hallway ceiling. I forced myself to grab it, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it again. I pointed the light straight into the crawlspace, bracing myself for something. First, I saw nothing, just the rough dirt walls and the tunnel stretching deeper into the dark. Then movement. Something shifted just beyond the beam's reach. I leaned forward just an inch and the light caught it. A face. Or something trying to be a face. Its skin looked stretched too tightly, like old leather pulled over a skull. The eyes were wide, milky, and glinting in the light. And the mouth, God, the mouth was wrong. It stretched too far, curling upward into a grin that didn't move when it spoke. Down, it rasped again. And then, it started crawling out. I didn't hesitate. I bolted down the hallway, past the crawlspace, past the stairs. Every door I tried was locked. Every window barred. Behind me, I could hear it moving. Not running, slithering, almost like it was too big for its own limbs, but somehow faster than anything alive should be. Its voice followed me, low and rasping, echoing in every corner. Down, down, down. I dove into the basement door, praying I could hide. The room was pitch dark, the air thick with dust and mildew. My heart felt like it was trying to leap out of my chest. Then the voice was right behind me, closer than the air on my neck. I could feel its breath. I grabbed a crowbar from the corner and swung blindly. Something hit the floor with a wet thud. I didn't look. I ran. And that's when I realized the basement door had closed behind me. On its own. The basement was dark. Too dark. My flashlight flickered and died. I heard a whispering all around me. Hundreds of voices, layered, chanting, down, down, down. I stumbled forward and my foot caught something soft. I screamed. A small, cold hand grabbed my ankle. Another hand. Then another. They pulled me down into the darkness beneath the house. The tunnel. The crawlspace. The whispers, it was all connected. The house itself was alive. Feeding. Keeping something trapped underneath. I don't know how long I was pulled. Seconds? Minutes? Hours? All I know is I hit the cold, damp earth below, and saw hundreds of eyes staring up at me from the darkness. They weren't human. None of them. And they smiled. I'm writing this now from what little light I can scrape together. If you ever find a house like mine, don't go down. Don't open doors that shouldn't be opened. Because once it calls you down, it doesn't let go.